Hi everyone, we're here talking about men and women, men's rights, women's rights. I'm a woman, got a man over here, although in the simple sense, I guess, could we say the biological sense, if anything? And we're just going to talk about do men need women anymore? Do women need men anymore? Shit. It's all over the place, the world. We just want to have a conversation about our experiences. Briefly, my experiences as a woman, being a shy woman. I seemed to look good to boys, so I chased boys around for years and years, and then I had kids. Then my oldest daughter grew up, and then I started university and started to learn about the world, and married someone who was a kind of a conservative, I guess. We lived together for a while, and I feel like I was a very lefty feminist for a long time, and I would increasingly blame my husband for things, being a man, and things that I expected him to be as a man. And then one day our friend was coming over, and my husband said, this man is suffering, he's gone through some stuff with his wife. I don't want you to upset him by, preaching this feminist stuff at him. And when this man walked through the door and we sat down and started talking, something clicked in my head, and I thought, oh, this is a human being. He's got experiences. And I seem to, from that day, stop being a woke, what a lot of people now saying in the woke cult, I was going to say culture. It's kind of a popular reality, an ideology or a way of thinking. So I've developed this interest in talking to people from opposing views, and this series that I hope to do is about men and women. So my friend here, Karen Sockermum, is the man that I had that conversation with, I think 4 or 5 years ago. It was the sort of beginning of it all. And so I'd like to invite my friend here to talk about their experiences. I guess I guess as a man, I don't want to say anything about your experiences. Maybe even from that time when you were suffering, with issues as a married man, and questioning everything about men and women and feminism and growing up as a man, and I don't know if just talk about what you think of the whole thing, relationships with men and women, your experiences, sort of briefly, to just have a short introductory discussion about it.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Maureen. I'm Karen Sockermum. I was born a male, but I now identify as a neurodivergent, non-binary, gender transcendent, ex-ancestral Black Irish slave of colour, identifying today as a dolphin. I'm a refugee from the left. I was schooled in Canberra after moving around a bit. Schooled in Canberra, Gough Whitlam's old school. And Canberra was very left wing then. We're all outraged when Gough Whitlam got the sack. He used to drive past our school in his Mercedes with tinted windows and never once stopped there in the whole 4 years I was at school. And I went to that school just as he got into office and left school as he got the sack. And the school was exactly the same, run like a 1930s sort of Charles Dickens sort of school, quite brutish, quite left-leaning. I remember there was this rise of feminism in around the 70s, mid-70s. There was a thing called School Without Walls popped up, and I was seeing this circle with a fist in it, or the female symbol with a fist in it. And they were people that lived in rich suburbs in Canberra doing this, and they would just complain a lot. And I was intrigued by it, but also annoyed because they just seemed to complain a lot. But nevertheless, in Canberra, it was either a choice of when you left school to join the public service or get a trade. And I just, various things happened to me where I was a little bit unimpressed with the idea of joining the public service and getting married and having a mortgage. And I thought, what other opportunity have I got? And I just thought, stuff, I'd always been a bit of a rebel, so I threw my school certificate in the bin. And had a motorbike and went to a hippie commune in northern New South Wales for a while. My brother was up there. He was sort of like a elder brother. He was like a Bob Dylan sort of character, Bob Dylan thing. And I found that I was in the hippie movement for a while, but I always felt like an outsider because I just was always skeptical and a bit cynical. No matter where I went, I would always just question it and just think about it. And I just started to think that more and more things started to get more feminized and men were pushed on the outer. On the hippie commune, it got more feminized. So there was sort of witches coming, witches' covens and everything like that, and women's meetings and women's groups. And any time the men would have a group, the women would be suspicious and want to come along because, there was people invading the property, stealing things, and men had to form basically a posse because there was no police out there. And the women, I thought, well, I'm not a violent person, but feel free to come along and stand in front of me, if you're that concerned. Of course, that didn't happen. So I started to get a bit cynical of this whole thing. And then I saw feminism get more and more powerful. I had a succession of feminist, communist girlfriends. And what I noticed was just the pre-feminism, women had it pretty good. But now this feminist lot came along that would complain a lot, demand more than their share, and leave you with nothing, and then talk about equality. And years later, you find out that, it was Karl Marx that said, in the industrial Western world, women are the most oppressed. And I think some people just grabbed onto that and ran with it. And bit by bit, I think that was in the late 80s, I started to just get really annoyed with hippies in general. Men, the beta male pedestalizing white knight manginas, as they call them now. I just call them stupid fucks. And they were the worst, really. I mean, feminism without males there to change the laws for them and to step out of the way and to enable them are far worse. I don't even blame women. It just got progressively more retarded to where somebody identifies as a feminist now. I just think, well, let us know how it works out. Let us know how it works out for you.
So you look at the men in your group. I kind of blame women in my group because I guess you can only see your own. Yeah, anyway.
Most men have no idea what women think or how they go about. They're protected by a whole screen of bullshit. And men are just hardwired to work, provide, And now feminism's come along. It's not only work and provide, but keep women and children safe, and all this other woke stuff. Men have no rights. Men have no rights. Men's rights have been taken away. There's been attacks on the church, the family, and land. And so even now, I've got to the stage where after a disastrous marriage, where she was a gold digger, I just wanted to call it off. She threatened to kill me. I ring up Men's Line. It's answered by a woman. I said, may I speak to a man? And they said, it's a 24-hour wait. And I said, well, thank you very much. You ring up Lifeline. I said, my wife is threatening to kill me and I'm a little bit freaked out. What can I do? And they said, well, you've made the first step. No talk of like going to the police and AVO, because I'm that sort of person where I leave the cops out of it. I have never called a cop in my life. You try and work it out with just talking like reasonable, rational human beings. But going through life, I realised the whole ball game has changed. There's this whole nightmare shadow state there that's against men. And I just thought, well, after the wife, and that's when I started talking to you, after the wife accused me of having an affair, which was untrue, told that to the police, worthy of an Oscar award, her performance in court, you know, acting like a frail woman, you know. Like I wish I had footage of all the knives lying around the house, the amount of times she kicked me and abused me.
Really?
Yeah, so breaking up with her wasn't that bad. It was heartbreaking at the time, but the worst part was being removed from your house at midnight, not being able to find a lawyer to represent me, and various other things. The point where even the legal aid lawyer was a feminist and did nothing for me in the court. And it sort of struck me after having a few days after with my wife. I just started saying, do you realise there's this whole nightmare shadow state that's against men? And they'll go, oh, really? Oh, could you take me to the markets? I want to get some new earrings. And I thought,
you had a few days with her in the home. You had a few days left with her after all that happened?
No. Once I had the AVO, I was out of the house and not allowed to see her for a year.
Oh.
I left the house with the clothes on my back and a quick bag, because it's very traumatic being thrown out of your house at midnight. And I'd say to any men that want to date, let alone cohabitate or marry, to get yourself a good lawyer, know exactly what your rights are, know exactly what you want out of the relationship, and a prenup, but none of that is any use anyway. That all she has to do is ring up the police and say, this man has ignored me. You know, even the silent treatment is abuse now, because the definitions of violence, because I never hit her, the definitions of violence now are so nebulous and so broad that there's spiritual violence, religious violence, emotional violence, silence is violence. Yeah. So feminism has gone way beyond its goals. So anybody who calls himself a feminist now, I'm just, I'm sorry. I like the old style feminist, Erin Pizzey. Great deal of admiration for her. Perhaps you introduced me to Camille Paglia.
Yeah.
There's a few others.
I haven't heard of that you said.
She's in the Red Pill movie. She's the one that set up the first domestic violence shelter in England. She went to do one for men, and the feminists there said, nah. Although there's footage there of women saying they're as violent as men. So it's got so much bullshit now that, and you just get these horror stories all the time, and all the media is all about shaming men all the time. And you get sent to this Duluth model, this men's behavioural change program, and they tell you you're privileged and entitled. And I thought, if my taxes are paying for this bitch to say this to me, I'm out. I'm going. I've always been a rebel. I've been homeless a few times. I lived in shitholes and squats, so it wasn't a big shock to check out and leave, you know.
Was that was the judge saying you had to finish that program? So it was a mandatory.
Yep, no conviction, but if you don't go to the Duluth model, 2 hours for 18 weeks. And basically, it's basically like the nuns that I had when I was like 50 years before, or what, you know, the late 60s, the same nuns. Except these Nurse Ratched types, you know, if you know Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Well,
Men are privileged and entitled.
Yeah.
And I said, does that mean, and I was like the Jack Nicholson character, she said, men are privileged and entitled. And I said, well, my elder brother got drafted for the Vietnam War, but my sister didn't. Where is the privilege in that? And she said, you're being disruptive.
Yeah.
And you can't leave. You can't leave. You have to stay there and just be whacked over the head. This power and control wheel, it's all about male power and control, privilege and everything like that. And I thought, I just am looking for my privilege. I said, my only privilege is to work and pay tax. Saying to myself, to pay your wages. So men are working and paying tax for a system that hates them. Even churches now are cut. So
if your wife, because I'm thinking about the last conversation we had about how you work close with your wife, and it seems like something interrupted your private relationship where, and it nearly happened to me. Like, I'm listening to you talking about it. Me and my husband started down that road where we got suspicious of each other. You know, he started talking to lawyers, you know, what if she tries to take everything? I'm talking to people like, what if he, you know, what if I can't get the money that I've asked for? But it was, you know, it was a unique situation because, you know, not to go into it, but if, you know, the last time, you know, you were talking about you and your wife, just your relationship, if none of that stuff interfered where people took you out of your house and, you know, you're in court and stuff, it seemed like that you and her could have just stayed together. And, you know, and you were saying that she got too greedy. So like that, the problem I see in society is, you know, consumerism and just human greed in general. But it seemed to, with feminism and, you know, getting more and more, you know, I think there's different kinds of feminism still, people, but they're not aware of the very pervasive, or the very, what's the word? Not a, you know, aggressive type that kind of lots of women just seem to use against their partners, but you know, then the partner wants to redeem his you know, sense of self or whatever. So then, and this is what I'm hearing from my neighbours, I don't think they're bad people, but I can hear them both trying to retain their dignity by yelling at each other back and forth. Or I hear the man kind of dig at her, and then she screams, you know, at the top of all I hear her yelling is, why did you say that to me? What did you say? You know, you effing wanker. You know, it's an old school Aussie talk out here. You wanker, constantly. I just hear her. But yeah, because, you know, but it's a very complex relationship. You know, they've had past drug addiction. I think she's struggling more with it. He's, you know, she's bringing millions of bits of wood in, and she's just playing, you know, she's got some crazy hobby where she's filling up rooms full of bits of wood for pallets, and he's not happy, but he's not, you know, yeah, so it's just this breakdown of a relationship. But yeah, I've heard, you know, from what I hear you talk about your relationship, you loved each other and you were planning to just be together in your marriage, and it's like the conflict is too great. And to me, my interest is conflict resolution. Why, men and women, I heard my parents arguing, mum screaming at dad nearly every night for years and years and years. I wonder if that's why I'm so interested. But, just why does it never get settled? Because we live in, I don't know. You're not, I don't expect you to go, oh, you should try and understand your wife's perspective, because she does have her own, whether she's from a different culture and that kind of stuff. But why are you expected to just change? My solution seems to be we all need to change. Women need to listen to men. I find it very interesting listening to men. I don't know if men have been listening to women. They've just been rebelling. And then feminism has just kind of blanketed society as we see it now, so that women we're getting our own way. I can still say, oh yeah, I'm still objectified. Whatever reasons I think that I'm still oppressed. It's sort of my own, private experience, instead of society putting men over, So it's like, this conversation's huge, and your experience is one vital piece of evidence that should go beside all of the experiences. That's what sociology is meant to be. That's what I'm meant to be studying, the statistics of experiences, like you were saying, men's suicide. We all know, well, I'm seeing a lot on Facebook, men's suicide is really high. Men commit suicide more often. Supposedly women attempt suicide more often. So there's a big discussion about that, is it real suicide, or is it but yeah, for sure, the men I've known that have committed suicide, the pain they must be in to put a rope around their neck and jump off a chair, or shoot themselves in the head, or it just must be horrific. And why are we going, oh, men are depressed, boo-hoo? This is what in that Red Pill movie, which everyone should watch because it's very balanced. I mean, she's not on any kind of agenda. But she's listening to a lot of the men's rights and what seems to be a few feminists, but you can't really find that many, to go on the record. She had a couple of really good academics, didn't she? Yeah, feminist academics. But just to hear a man talking about his pain, and then a feminist just to go, boo fucking who, or what did she say? She was just calling him fuckhead, or just screaming in his face outside at rallies that they have. Yeah, he was trying to have a men's rally. So you went to a couple of men's rights things. You kind of got into it a bit, and then you.
Yes, I guess I had an epiphany. My wife was good at the beginning. It was caring and loving, and you have a honeymoon period for about 18 months. And then I just started to get a bit discontented because she just got more materialistic, rolling her eyes more, which was the pattern I've had in lots of relationships. And then I realised, gee whiz, I thought this at marriage at age 56. I found the one, and she was the one for a while, but it was all an act. My feeling is men and women love each other differently. Men will kill themselves over a relationship. They will look at that woman, because we're programmed to think that she's more emotionally sensitive. that her needs matter more, that we've got to protect her, we've got to be a human shield. And that's how we're brought up. Feminism's come along and made women into slobs, entitled slobs with too much power. What actually was the light bulb moment was one morning my wife said to me, hey, there's this Muslim woman on the ABC, like some stupid Spicks and Specks or something, saying that Islam is the most feminist of religions. And I thought, really? The government broadcaster, my tax money again, having this dickhead on there saying that? Really? So I just investigated it, and I thought, really? I grew up with Indians and Muslims, and it's the most feminist religion. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. And I just started investigating a bit more, looking to Islam, and it just came into this sort of thing like the Red Pill film. And yes, I did look into men's rights activism. I know a few MRAs, but they do fuck all. They write articles and such like, but nothing's changed. They get shut down. The Red Pill movie got shut down in Melbourne. Mm. And what I mean about men and women loving each other differently, I can't quite put my finger on it, but with the women that I've had, the man comes about third. He wants a soulmate, especially Aussie women. I really want a soulmate. And that just, how can you get that? How can you get soulmate? It means you have to give. And when she says, we need to talk, oh my God, I want to run for the hills. That means I've got to change.
Yeah.
I've got to change. And like, women have always been hard work to men, never wrong. They rarely apologise. They'll just roll their eyes. They'll hit you over the head. You've got to just keep on trying to get their approval and happy wife, happy life. That was, and now you add feminism to it, it's just retard to the max. And so it's got to the stage now where I split up with the wife, tried to have a few dates after her. I just thought, here we go again. I'm driving around and she's rolling her eyes after a while. And I'm thinking, the feeling I get, with a few exceptions, women are much the same as each other. Men have a really broad range of characters. You can have enough that just sits there and pulls the wings off butterflies, and you can have a nuclear physicist.
You don't think
women are pretty much in the middle?
You don't feel that women have
not all. Pardon?
You don't. It doesn't feel like women have that range, you're saying? I just wonder if you'd ask women that, yeah, they might. I wonder if, like, you know, we're so divided that we have those kinds of, you know, because are they just opinions? It's from a lifetime of observation that you're thinking about this. So
women prefer the company of other women. They'd be bored to death with a man around.
But a lot of women
love their own little groups, their own little sewing circles, their own little pottery groups, own little macrame things, or now it's sort of like, you know, women's empowerment or healing or rebirthing or all these other things. Men don't get together much unless it's short term for a football team or something like that. Some little firefighting, then they'll go their own way and do stuff like that. Women strike me as just having groups. Sure, there's tensions in between the groups. There's all cat fighting or everything like that. But the feeling I get, they much prefer their own company, because basically their minds are at that same level. Men have all these books. I had all these books. I couldn't get any of the women interested in any of them or anything like that. Nothing. None of them. I had more girlfriends I care to imagine, of all types, all shapes and sizes and nationalities. And I could honestly say that I thought we were cheated. they had it good in the old days, and I reckon feminism has fucked it up for them. And anybody that calls themselves a feminist has sold themselves down the river, because men are just starting to avoid it. I'm not the only one. Like a lot of things, I've been ahead of the curve. I got out of Melbourne last year. Quit work. I've always been minimalist. Quit work and moved out in the bush and become a tax consumer rather than a tax provider. I'm working on going off grid slowly. But what incentive is there in me to have a girlfriend? There's been a few women flutter their eyelids at me when my hair was shorter and I was clean shaven. I can't be fucked. I can't be fucked. There's one recently came around talking. She was into BSA motorbikes. And I said, oh, the one you got, the one after, this is when they changed, wasn't it? And she said, geez, you talk a lot of shit. And I'm thinking, really? You're right into BSAs. In fact, that's all you're into is BSA motorcycles, and you don't know fucking shit about them? Like, come on. Come on.
Did you catch her
if
out?
That's all you're into, and you don't even fucking know anything about it. Like,
was she upset that you, that you tried to talk about motorbikes and she didn't know? Is that why she was upset? Because it sounds like women, because
she was speaking female. She was speaking female.
I like hanging out with men.
There is a dialect that females speak.
I like hanging out with men. It seems like a lifelong thing. I found that boys and men, they're not as judgmental as some women. I mean, my best friends are girls and women, but I've never hung out in groups of girls. That bitchiness is terrifying, and there's some kind of power with their emotional manipulation that I was never really able to do. So I suppose I still had the capacity to manipulate men, but in another way, in romantic relationships. But then I was a woman that just wanted a traditional what do you call it, one man, one woman relationship. What do you call that? Monogamy.
Monogamous.
Yeah. And then I would follow, whatever man I was with, sort of, I guess, because I didn't have any real interest, probably like what you're saying. But I wanted to be interested. I just didn't. So I would read. One guy read Lord of the Rings in 12 hours. He just sat and read the whole book, all 3 books, within a 12-hour sitting. I was just fascinated by that he was a typical kind of boy, it's just like make things with your hands, play, you're not too interested in the emotional realm, and I was just being tortured by my emotional, social awkwardness and desire to please others. Jordan Peterson saying, the first word I heard him say that I hated him for, agreeableness. And I went, oh, who the fuck's this? He's an arsehole. But, he's a psychologist. You're agreeable or you're disagreeable. More women are agreeable, but only by, I love what he says, that men and women are similar, but their differences are significant. That's how he kind of starts his talk about, and then that agreeableness. I think it's like 30 to 40%. No, 60% of women are agreeable, but that means 40% of men have that agreeableness. So,
yep.
There's still more men in high position jobs, but who cares? They spend 12 hours in that cutthroat just to get the highest position. Why do I give a shit if women need to be in the top 100, what do they call it, Fortune 500, or why are we so desperate to be equal? Maybe we just don't know ourselves, and we're just got to blame someone. I always had to blame, and it's still, my husband, sometimes it's his fault, but I have to recognise when it's my fault, and that his skills, when the neighbours were fighting the other night and I thought it was getting physical, he just went straight over there, and I just thought, I couldn't do that. And for him, he's got a lot of self-esteem issues, but he can still do that, go over to the neighbours to make sure they're okay. And I think, why could I blame him for anything if he's got a skill like that, you know? That kind of confidence. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yes. Well, aren't feminists now empowered and equal to men and even make better managers than men? Why didn't you go over? Besides, if they'd touched you, you could sue them back in the Stone Age.
Well,
your husband got beat up. Tough luck, mate.
Well, not skill. My part in this was that I have this awareness of people. So I had the awareness that it was happening, and then I brought it to him, and then he was able to do the step, you know, that needed to be done. And then he couldn't leave. This was funny. He didn't know how to leave because they were so, he was a bit wary of them, you know. Out here, I'm in Gippsland as well, you know, the big bush, and people are just kind of a bit scary because there's more freedom, whatever reason. So he's texting me, how do I get out of here? And I said, you just tell them you need to leave, and then you just get up and walk out the door. And he's kind of caught by, you know, I don't think the man was overly aggressive, but you know, my husband's not a typical man where he's physically confident. He's quite worried.
No, he's weedy and he's fragile. Why didn't you go over? You didn't answer my question. Since feminism has taught women they're equal to men, even better. A lot of feminists say women are better than men because they feel more and they have a broader range of interests.
Well, I'd argue that there's not
empowered.
Many of those women.
Why couldn't you go over?
I would argue that there's not many of those women. I don't know how long I've never believed that women were better. I just thought that we were given some kind of gift that they told us men always had. So, okay, we're given the gift of these jobs. And I actually thought women weren't as talented, but we were just given jobs. And that could be right sometimes, but other times it's not. Like, I find, there's a female comedian. There's not many comedians that I love, but Hannah Gadsby, you know, she's hilarious, and she's on the neurodiverse spectrum, and she's a lesbian, but she's still a woman and her comedy is about men and women, but she does it in a way that's funny. She talks about, oh, women are hormonal, well, so are men. You know, we're both hormonal. Men get a bit aggressive and punch walls. Women, you know, rant and rave, you know, when they've got their periods or whatever, and they're bitchy. But she, you know, she does it in comedy. So, I don't know. I was watching that and some other things and thinking, oh, the first time I actually realised women can be as good as men, but you can't just expect women to just be given extra, you know, put them further along the starting line. Like, they've got it, like, I don't want to whinge anymore. It's like, if I can't deal with, you know, the public world, you know, I have to admit that I'm too weak to go to my neighbours because I'm too afraid, and that I, at this point in my life, still need the masculine part of, you know, because we're bringing up children. That's kind of why we're here. I want my children to be healthy, to be off their screens, and the kids are getting brainwashed by kind of the woke ideology. But parts of woke ideology is necessary. This is my interest. I think both halves need to be there for each other. So, you know, I wouldn't use, I'd like in the near future the word feminism just to be, not needed. You know, like the one word that I've heard is I'm an equalist. So like working towards everyone being equal, especially with gender, because I don't know, Australia doesn't seem to have the kind of racism in America or the kind of issues that they're facing, where is it racism or is it poor communities that need some kind of change, where some neighbourhoods are black, and they, you know, instead of saying it's just racism, is it, you know, some other causes, like is domestic violence in Australia?
Such thing. There's no such thing as racism. Every race thinks their race is the best. Everybody prefers the company of their own people, with a few exceptions, but you go to a lunchroom in any workplace and there'll be people there of that mob, people there of that mob. And even amongst white people, there will be your bogans that love football and that's all they talk about. You'll be the arty people, you'll be your misfits and your loners. Racism is one of those magic words that have been cooked up to fuck with people's heads, like anti-Semitism, like Islamophobia, like ageist, and all these magic words that come up that can shut down a conversation. Fascist,
Yeah.
Nazi, it just shuts a conversation down. They're racist. It is more racist against whites now than it's ever has been.
Yeah,
it is just such bullshit. Americans it's all just painted as white man is racist, and is that the problem with slavery and all this stuff, and it's just absolute bullshit to stop people from talking, shame them into not speaking.
Yeah. Tell
me I'm lying, please.
Well, just in that last minute, because now we're coming to the end of our introductory about men and women, but what I think is those words, we're still using them, like, you know, you still use the word racist, but now you're suggesting that the racism has gone not in the opposite direction, but it's being used in a political way, you know, for people to score points for their group. Probably the same as the feminism kind of, you know. And that
the narrative now is that only white people are racist. Brown people can't be racist. And the survey's done that brown people are more racist than anyone. You know, like African Americans or like that.
Do you think,
yes, you have other people go, me, they don't like this, you know, and they go, oh, you're racist. And it will create racist. And that's what they want. They just want to pull things apart, so divide stuff. When I moved down here in Gippsland, I talked to this fella in a restaurant, and he said when we were kids, they used to play sport with the black fellas. I went to school with them. There was no worries. They all ribbed each other. They had a good time. They shook hands, played footy. They would hang out, and they would go back to their respective areas, and there was no dramas. Now, because there's been so much money and all these Karens running all these centres in this town, there's just all these government agencies. You'd think we'd never been more racist and the Aboriginals never been more persecuted. And you look at them at the mall and they're more miserable than ever, the black fellas. And they're on the first name terms of the police and everything like that. And something has just gone really badly wrong, and I could go into it with my observations, but the 10 minutes are up and maybe we should start a new segment.
It's about 45 minutes. Okay, yeah, we'll end it there. I'd like to invite my other friends that are interested in this kind of debate, and yeah, till next time. Bye.